Hello, welcome to Trade of the Week, where we discuss the thinking behind choosing a trade and how to place it. So Josh Mahoney, he chose to go long on Kiwi dollar, based mainly on technical analysis, yet did warn that US data could potentially flip this on its head. So Chris Beauchamp is here in this revolving chair just now. So how did Josh do with this trade?
Not spectacularly well. I think of his own admission, it wasn't the greatest trade. We did have, as you say, US data really taking over in terms of the driving seat from the New Zealand dollar. It has been on a rising trend since the beginning of 2016. You can see on that chart there, really had a low in January and steady moves higher. So he was going with the trend, but unfortunately the dip was slightly bigger than anticipated, really. It's one of those cases where fundamental data really does come in to override a technical outlook. And I think it's a good lesson to discover this, because I think a lot of people forget that obviously other things can interfere with the trade, and that you should manage your risk appropriately. So if you did follow that when it didn't work out, as long as you were putting in your stops and you managed your trade size as well, it may not have turned out to be too problematic, but certainly I think one to chalk up to experience for this week. Yeah,
and as you say, it demonstrates the fact that you often need the technical analysis with the macroeconomic study too. Okay, moving forward then, obviously next week is a huge week in terms of data. We've got the Federal Reserve, we've got the Bank of Japan, UK GDP. What have you got your eye on, and where are you going to place yourself?
Well, we're looking at the dollar against the Japanese yen. This one's been in a long-term downtrend since the beginning of the year. You can see on the chart that it's been a steady case of moving lower, punctuated by these spikes in the price there. And that's been an interesting one to watch, because you can see on the chart every time it gets just above this 50-day moving average, this blue line, it then sells off again. We had this at the beginning of February, it did it again at the beginning of June, and it might be doing it again now. And it's also a nice downtrend line there that we've put on the chart just to illustrate the general direction for this currency pair. Now, with so much US data this week, GDP numbers, of course, the Fed decision, and also plenty from Japan, it could be an interesting week. But I think the argument here is to wait for these sort of counter trend moves, this big spike in the price, because it's moved nigh on 600 points since its July low, but now it seems to really have run out of steam on the downside. So I would argue that you can put your stop in actually around, I'd say, probably about the 107.50 area. That's the high from yesterday and the day before, and that you can argue that the sell trade is the one to watch. Potentially it may go down in the first instance to about this May low of 105.45, maybe even the longer term, maybe beyond next week, down towards that 100 level. But I think that's probably the one to watch out for this week.
Okay, and because there is a lot of macro data happening next week, do you think that anything could happen that might put a hurdle in front of this trade or flip it over?
Well, I suppose the two things to watch really are what the Fed says and what the Bank of Japan says. And if either of them say something that should strengthen the US dollar, the Fed might suggest that they might raise rates earlier than people think, or the Bank of Japan might look to announce a big easing program next week, and that's probably unlikely. That would probably send the currency pair moving higher, potentially break this downtrend. So those are the two big events I think you should be watching out for.
All right, thank you very much indeed. That's Chris Beauchamp. So that is how it's done. We're watching dollar yen next week. And indeed, I think the world will be watching dollar yen as well. Thank you for watching. And if you're one of the 2 million people heading abroad this weekend, have a fantastic time. I'm not going anywhere though. I will be here on IGTV on Monday. So come back for some more. Goodbye.